Welcome to a Legendarium special about the Essex, the nightmare voyage that inspired Moby Dick. In this episode, we will learn about one of the most catastrophic sea voyages in the history of the early United States. As the United States marched through the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century, whale products became valuable commodities. Manufacturers used whale blubber to make candles and oil, which heated lamps and lubricated machinery. Whalers also harvested whalebone for the ribs in women's corsets, umbrellas, and petticoats. As such, whaling became a booming American industry, especially in New England. In 1799, shipwrights in Amesbury, Massachusetts, made a three-masted ship from white oak which measured 87 feet and became famous for its strength. She became known as the whaling ship Essex, and she had a reputation for being lucky, probably because of her history of profitable expeditions. This made 29-year-old Captain George Pollard Jr., one of the youngest whale ship captains ever, confident that his excursion would be no different. On August 12, 1819, Captain Pollard and his crew set sail from Nantucket, Massachusetts. However, bad luck dogged the Essex from the start. Just 2 days after leaving Nantucket, a squall nearly sank her. Captain Pollard initially hoped to return to Nantucket. However, First Mate Owen Chase, probably worried the men might desert if they turned back so soon, persuaded him to continue on. Even though the storm damaged 2 of the 5 smaller boats they would use in hunting whales, Captain Pollard pushed on until he reached the Galapagos. When the expedition arrived at Charles Island in the Galapagos archipelago, a prank gone wrong nearly cost them everything. One of the sailors lit a fire on land that quickly got out of hand, and as the men ran through the flames to survive, they nearly incinerated the entire island. After this newest disaster, the ship spent a year on the sea lanes harvesting whales. Finally, the Essex came face to face with a massive sperm whale in the vast emptiness of the South Pacific. Owen Chase, first mate of the Essex, first saw the whale. At 85 feet long, it proved abnormally large even for a male sperm whale, made even more frightening by being covered in scars. Even worse, the whale pointed itself directly at the ship, perhaps provoked or made curious by repeated pounding of planks that sounded in the ocean. After shooting a few warning spouts into the air, the whale barreled towards the vessel. Surf flew in all directions around it, with the violent thrashing of his tail. The whale's head rose about half out of the water, opening and closing its mouth. Finally, the whale rammed its head into the ship, backed up, and then did so again before swimming away. After the attack, the Essex began taking on water. The crew shoved supplies into their rowboats and quickly abandoned the whale ship. Captain Pollard's crew of 20 spread across 3 boats. Now they faced a terrible choice. Captain Pollard suggested they sail to the closest land, namely the Marquesas Islands, more than 1,000 miles away. However, the crew refused, claiming that cannibals lived on the islands. Very ironic considering what happened in days to come. Instead, the men insisted on sailing towards Peru, and they spent the next 92 days searching for another ship. Within 2 weeks, the crew had barely any rations left, and yet another whale attacked Captain Pollard's boat. When the 3 ships reached the uninhabited island of Henderson, Captain Pollard wrote an account of the shipwreck, sealed it in a tin box, and nailed it to a tree. If they died, at least someone would know what happened to the crew of the Essex. Pollard called his men back to the rowboats, but 3 men refused to leave the island, preferring their chances on land. 17 men returned to their boats. At night, whales began circling their ships. Nearly 2 months into the ordeal, a crewman died aboard Chase's ship. The men tore limbs from his body and cut flesh from the bones. They opened up the body, took out the heart to eat, and then sewed it up again. After eating the tasty bits, they repaired the corpse as best they could and buried the man at sea. Before long, the 3 boats lost sight of each other. One vanished completely and would never be found. Then Pollard lost sight of Chase's boat. 9 weeks passed on the open sea, and one of the 4 men left alive on Captain Pollard's ship suggested drawing lots and eating the loser. The short straw went to Owen Coffin, Captain Pollard's 18-year-old cousin. Despite the captain's furious protests, the crew shot Coffin and made a meal out of him. Tragically, despite his earlier protests, Captain Pollard joined in the grisly meal, devouring his own cousin. After 94 days at sea, only Pollard and a single crewman survived on their boat, the others having become dinner. Finally, a Nantucket whaling ship picked them up. Pollard had stuffed his pockets with bones and continued sucking on their marrow as he climbed aboard, much to the horror of the Nantucket whalers. Of the 20 sailors who embarked on the lifeboats, only 8 survived, with the others becoming dinner or remaining stranded on the island. Back in Nantucket, Captain Pollard's family rejected him because they could not forgive him for eating his own cousin. Pollard did not find any comfort out at sea either, as men considered him a Jonah or an unlucky captain. In his 30s, Pollard retired to Nantucket and became a night watchman. On each anniversary of the Essex sinking, he locked himself in a room and fasted, eating no food and drinking no water. During the years that followed, a survivor of the expedition encountered a young sailor named Herman Melville, who would be inspired by the story to write the classic novel Moby Dick. That wraps things up for this episode of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.